Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and we are up to the Colorado Avalanche here on our previews. I've got Stefano Rubino here. I can't remember if you did the season preview last year or not.
No, that was
No.
Carrie did season previews. I
Right.
did playoff
There
previews.
we go. I'm trying to remember. It's just
Yeah,
meshing together the previews. But yeah, so welcome. How's it going?
not too bad. I'm looking forward to it. My first off season has been very interesting. Been a good amount of action so far to write upon, and I'm looking forward to what this one brings upon.
For sure. Yeah, this season, I mean, the Avalanche had another great season
Mhm.
last year. I mean, they didn't make it very far in the playoffs. I mean, they lost in the second round to
Mhm.
the Dallas Stars. But I mean, still really good team going into this season. They still all their guys. They could even get Gabriel Landeskog back
Yeah.
early on this season. We'll talk about that. But they're still a contender in this league. They're still a contender in the Central Division. Pretty tough division. They've finished really high up there with the Winnipeg Jets fighting with them throughout the season and for the second, third spots. Ended up third, but going into this season, let's just start with the forwards and
Mhm.
then talk about. I mean, there weren't a lot of changes in the offseason. They did re-sign, Jonathan Drouin, which is a big
Mhm.
deal because he had a really good season, and now he can just get back inserted back onto that top line. Talk about the forwards. I mean, there are a couple new faces. Parker Kelly on the fourth line. Uh, you know, Nikolai Kovalenko is a new
Mhm.
face. So what do you think about the forwards going into this season? Obviously, Nathan MacKinnon is the big star still coming up off that 140 point season. And then of course Rantanen as well. So what do you got for the forwards here?
The forward group hasn't really changed much, and for really didn't need to. Big topic of discussion was getting Jonathan Drouin. Many thought it would be done before the actual free agency opened up, but there's reports saying both sides wanted to get it done, but nothing really clicked. But we've found out just a little bit after free agency opened. 1 year deal, another kind of prove it deal to say, hey, you got a really good second half of the season. Can you repeat in a bigger payday? Forward group, Landeskog has definitely been a topic of discussion the past 2 years. There's been from the press conference in May to off-season training. We've been getting hints and teasers, and even him saying that, hey, I hope to be back. There's no clear date. It could be game one, it could be game 82. We don't know. Another big topic of discussion is Valery Nichushkin. He
Mhm.
got placed in stage three of the player assistance program. He's a topic of you can't come back in November, but when you be placed in stage three, you need to apply via Gary Bettman and the team. And so that there's a whole another behind the scenes of whatever news comes out. It's because it's coming out. The bottom six hasn't really changed much. Parker Kelly added in to the depth as well. Nikolai Kovalenko joined partway through last year as a rookie, a little bit undersized, but he's got great legs. He's got great food. He's despite the size, willing to throw the body as well. But the forward group doesn't have really changed. They re-signed Casey Middlestat, that second line. That was a big they add on the trade deadline. They got that contract done. And besides the big two asterisks when it comes to Landeskog and Valery Nichushkin, the top 12 is really the same.
Yeah, I mean, the Avalanche are going to have to make some decisions, especially if Nichushkin comes back,
Hmm.
depending on when he comes back. And then, of course, Landeskog coming back, that's a big cap hit getting added in. They have to
Hmm.
keep the room open. They can't be,
Yeah.
signing a bunch of guys to fill that in. Is that going to be a big thing for the Avalanche really early on? Because if Landeskog does come back within the first
Yeah.
few games, they're going to have the cap space.
Yeah, and that's something we saw this offseason. Obviously, they had cap space going into offseason, but they weren't contenders for a Steven Stamkos, a Jonathan Marchessault. So Uh, Duran was signed for 1.5. Parker Kelly was about 1.2. Uh, Casey Milstead was the largest at a contract extension, but he was someone that they traded for because they needed a second line center. He's only 26. He's gonna be able to grow with the team. A lot of other additions to the goaltenders and defense we'll talk in a bit were all around $1 million and
Mhm.
under. And they right now have, I do believe, about $2 to $3 million range, but changes will obviously will need to come when they get the idea of when Landeskog wants to come in and however Nichushkin is handled with Gary Bettman in the league and being reinstated.
Yeah, I mean those are two big pieces too. I mean, Nichushkin's been amazing since he's
Very.
come to the Avalanche, even though he has been out a couple
Hmm.
times. He's still come back and still been the same player. So
Hmm.
that's expected to happen again. And then, of course, Landeskog. It's going to be interesting to see when he comes back, how good he looks and how long it takes for him to kind of shake the rust off because he hasn't
Yeah.
played since that Stanley Cup
Yeah.
final. So that's a long time
Very.
to come back, right? So that's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back from that injury. All right, moving to the defense. I mean, there were quite a few changes. It didn't look like there was going to be,
No.
but then they added a couple guys, like you said, on those low contracts. Oliver Shillington coming from the Flames, Eric Brandstrom being bought out or not bought out. He was let go as a
Yeah.
restricted free
Wasn't
agent with the
re-signed.
Senators, so he became a UFA, and then
Hmm.
the Avalanche picked him up. So two interesting bodies. I mean, they're guys that have, Shillington, of course, had the, mental health
Hmm.
issues personal issues that he had. Came back, looked pretty good with the
Yep.
Flames. So, I mean, he could be a good addition. Other than those two guys, you still got the top four coming back. Of course, Cale Makar leading the way, Devon
Hmm.
Taves, Josh Manson, and Samuel Girard. So their big four are still coming back. You got a new bottom pairing. What do you think about the defense going into this season?
Yeah, as we see, the top four hasn't really changed. There was no effort to change. I know you can have your 2 cents on Manson or Gerard based off their play and their contracts, but for what they've done, it's fine right now based off the cap hit. It was the bottom six we were worried about. I was a big fan of Sam Malinsky. He was able
Mhm.
to come in last year when Devon Tays was dealing with some injuries, Eric Johnson was dealing with some injuries, and he looked great. And he was someone you think, okay, he can be in that sixth role, 975 cap hit, cheap. But then they go out and they sign Eric Brandstrom. They go and sign out Calvin DeHaan. And so you're thinking, okay, Malinsky's going to fight with that 6-7 spot with Brandstrom. And then comes Oliver Shillington with it's 1.2 million, largest cap hit so far added within those defenders. And you see, okay, now there's going to be a really big test come training camp and leading on to the season of who's going to fight for that bottom pair. Calvin DeHaan is, I like to say, a lock. He plays left wing. He's a defender. You don't have to really force him for the offensive side. But Malinsky, Shillington, Amelinsky, and Brandstrom, excuse me, can all really move the puck well. And there's certain things they all do well and wrong. So it's really going to be interesting come training camp of how they just mix the lines and see who Bednar likes.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big battle in training camp for those last spots on defense, and they're
Hmm.
all NHL experienced guys. I mean, it's not guys that Omelinsky has the lower experience, so
Yeah,
um, it'll depend on who I guess beats out in training camp and who
it
plays
is.
better, right?
Hmm.
So, all right, goaltending again, not no changes really. Alexander Georgiev coming back as the starter, Eustace Annunen as the backup. I Do you have any question marks with that? I mean, I know there's been talk with Georgiev he's been up and down. He's been
Yeah,
okay. He's been really good. I mean, it's either the two extremes,
yeah.
right? He's either really good or really bad. So what do you think about the goaltending going into this? Because Georgiev's going to probably have to play a ton more unless you feel a bit more confidence in Annunen, maybe a 1A, 1B. I don't know if that's going to happen though.
Yeah, that's something that we really got to see. Going into the playoffs last year, I said Georgiev was easily our strongest weakness, especially when you compare him to Connor Hellebuck. But we
Yeah.
saw past game one, he was a Vezina-esque winning performance player, 940 save percentage above. He looked calm, he looked collected and strong, being a smaller stature than Hellebuck. So I really hope to see him have a stronger year this year. Unfortunately, it wasn't that bad last year because you saw him play over 60 games. He was not very confident in net, and you see him just not being able to get that breaks. Hopefully, we see something from a Eustace Annunen that be able to take off some of that ease, take off some of that workload, drop Georgiev's workload to say 45, 50 plus games, so Annunen can get that experience needed because he's only 24, 25, while having Georgiev's workload for being ready on those back-to-backs, those big Friday night games. And when it comes to Trent Miner, is someone who you're going to see more in the AHL. He played in the ECHL a lot, and I was thinking he was going to be able to see some time in the NHL. But he looks like someone he's going to be the starting goaltender with the Eagles. And maybe if there's an injury, he'll see some call-up time. But for now, expect Annunen and Georgiev as the starting two.
Is that something that the Avalanche should be looking at, though? I mean, there are some guys that are on the free agent market still. I mean, could be had for cheap. You got PTOs. I mean, is there anything you think the Avalanche will do there with the goaltending or?
Ah, it was interesting. I really thought they were going to go after someone like an Antti Ranta. I really thought someone to go like a James Reimer, just that
Mhm.
third string goaltender, someone that every week or so get one game in there, just get a rest, get a break. But they didn't do that. They just felt confident enough, I guess, in Georgiev's play. They all feel confident enough in Annunen's play. If anything does come through, we'll maybe see a call up from the AHL and a Trent Miner. If something happens throughout the season, we might see a signing here and there. But again, like we just talked about when it comes to Nichushkin and Landeskog, it's got to work within that cap, and that's hopefully one of the things they're really hoping doesn't take into play to where they have to get another goaltender.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the hope, of course, is that Georgiev and Annunen can be the good tandem and be solid enough they don't have to get any other guys. So
Mhm.
keep that cap space open for sure. All right. Speaking of the Central Division, very tough division. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of powerful teams. They, of course, like I said, battled with the Jets right to the end of the season, and the Stars, of course, come back and they're pretty much the same type of team again. You've got the up and coming teams. I mean, the Blackhawks probably aren't going to really challenge yet. I mean, they've got a better team, I think, veteran wise, but
Mhm.
I don't think they're going to really make a lot of noise. Uh, the Utah Hockey Club. I don't know about them. They could actually be a surprising team.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of unknowns
Mhm.
beyond the big three, I guess. And the Minnesota Wild could be a better team too this year.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's gonna be tough. Where do you think they stack up? Are they still in that fighting for the top? That 2-3 there.
I think out of anything after outside of a top three really is a underperforming slash disappointing season. I don't doubt the Central Division. I think it's going to be a lot tougher. I think, us as fans, we see the potential of a Utah Hockey Club, a Chicago Blackhawks, of, the pieces they add in, hoping they could be a little bit more competitive. I do think they're going to be competitive. I just don't think they're going to be good enough.
Mm.
Dallas, I think right now, Dallas is still going to be the biggest competitor to Colorado. Winnipeg, we'll see. I feel like Winnipeg is always a case by case when
Mm.
it comes to year and prediction wise. But I think outside of Dallas, Colorado, all healthy, should be in the top two, barring any injuries and really any setbacks.
Always forget about the Nashville Predators. They've added
Oh,
so many guys this season. And I every time I talk about the Central Division, I'm like,
exactly.
wait, the Predators are in here too.
Yeah.
And they were, of course, a playoff team this past
hmm
season. And they had added Steven Stamkos, Marcia. So I they're going to be an interesting team going in, and they were tough even
Yeah.
without those additions. So they're going to be a wild card as well.
Completely forgot about them as well. And I remember I remember talking to some of my friends and we're going through the playoffs and we're like, Colorado, we got kind of extremely lucky with the way Connor Hellebuyck kind of play just disappeared. He has that he does have a playoff record of just not performing well, but outside of game per game, you have to make sure. And you saw the Nashville Predators against the Vancouver Canucks, and they brought them
Mhm.
to sevens. The problem was they couldn't score. A lot of opportunities weren't capitulated, and the Canucks took up on that. And so now you get a healthy UC Saros with a stronger blue line with Brady Shea and two elite top six
Mhm.
players, and so you get to the echelon of where are you overhyping them? Is it the right amount of hype? But on paper, there's no justifying that they will be a not a wild card competing for anymore. It's a top two team they're competing
Yeah,
for. So again, yeah, I can completely forget about them because they've always been so middle of the pack, but they look dangerous. So we'll see.
yeah. It'll all depend on how they mesh well. I mean, we've seen in
Yeah,
the past these stars joining teams, they just don't work.
exactly.
So it'll depend on how Stamkos kind of fits in and how Marchessault fits with the roster and with Andrew Burnett's coaching too. So
Yeah.
they're gonna be an interesting one. I think the top four in this division is going to be really
Oh yeah.
tough to kind of find. So yeah, it's gonna be a battle, I think, throughout the season to see how all this goes. All right, let's move to the quick fire. And
Okay.
these are going to be quick ones. One sentence, two sentences each. So, first one, we've got biggest storyline question mark going into this season. We've probably already mentioned it.
Yeah. Landeskog Nichushkin, what are the updates? How are we going to see them coming back throughout the time? Is Landeskog going to look? How's Landeskog going to look? He's been practicing, but if it's not game practice and it's not gameplay, we're going to see. And Nichushkin, how is he going to come back? He's been great for them in the playoffs in the regular season. How is that situation going to be dealt with between management and Gary Bettman and getting him reinstated?
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest one. One or two breakout stars for this season.
One, Nikolai Kovalenko. I'm a big fan of his. He was someone I talked about who should watch last year, early in the season. He managed to come back after, negotiating his KHL contract and be able to move to North America. Undersized, quick, but very physical. I think he's going to start in the middle of the top six this year. And I think if he's able to capitalize on his speed and his game style with really shooting the puck creatively, I think he can really earn a spot. The second one I really like is Callum Ritchie. He's a guy that many Avalanche fans have been waiting for, including myself. He's been great in development camp. He's now healthy. Training camp is going to be another just big circle to watch for how he performs with some of the larger players. And so he's going to be someone you really want to see.
For sure, and there's that opening on the second line that is going to be a battle, right?
Oh
Kovalainen
yeah.
looks like, I mean, I'm seeing depth charts. It seems like he's there,
Hmm.
but he's not a lock for sure.
Yep.
So that'll depend. He's a good choice for sure. Other side, someone that needs to bounce back this season.
I talked about Georgiev's regular season play. I won't go too much on him, but I'm going to talk about Ross Colton. He was someone that going into the offseason was a big question mark on a lot of people's marks about being traded before July 1st with a no movement trade clause. $4 million contract. He plays on the third line, excuse me, who's I'm a big fan of, next to Miles Wood and Logan Connor. Unfortunately, was hurt last year, so they didn't really get that same mesh. But when playing together, they look really well. But it's $4 million contract. You kind of want more impact with him, and if it's too easy to say, just move him down to the fourth. Again, $4 million is a lot, and so I'm not hoping for, a 60, 70 point resurgence, but defensively, just being more secure with the puck and hopefully clicking well more with Logan O'Connor coming back.
Yeah, that was a big loss when O'Connor went down because he's a very effective bottom six guy. So if he
Hmm.
can come back, and of course Colton, we all know what he did in Tampa Bay. So
Yeah,
in a decent season, but
yeah,
yeah, you'd hope to be him to be a bit better
a
for that
little more.
he's got, right? All right, someone that needs not someone that could be an X factor. I mean, it doesn't have to be a player per se. It could be something, a situation too for this.
For me, I'm just gonna go back to Jonathan Drouin. I think this was a big year that really showed what he can do compared to back to his days in Montreal. Um, Beginning of the year, he was really cold. He bounced from the first to the third lines, playing left and right wing with a bunch of matchups, and we thought it was just gonna be a disappointing year. But come that second half of the season, he played on the top line with McKinnon and Rantanen, and he looked like a playmaker like we saw back in Montreal, closing in on almost 50 assists and adding to that top power play. So if he can resurface something we saw coming off that second half of the season, I think he can prime that offense right back in the line.
Yeah, that definitely go. I mean, Drouin is lately he's been an interesting case. I mean, whenever
Yeah.
he's been, but he seems like he kind of got it together after a bit of struggling at the beginning of the season. But everyone thought he was just going to click with McKinnon right away, and he
And that just
didn't.
didn't work.
But
Yeah.
eventually, they rekindled it. So yeah, definitely a big one for this season. All right, let's talk about prospects. You mentioned Callum Ritchie there.
Yeah.
Who do you think could surprise, and no one's kind of thinking about that could make the roster out of training camp?
We're talking about surprise. I got to go with Sean Behrens. Sean Behrens, after the University of Denver, won the championship and then signed his ELC. He's someone that I really thought could maybe push for a seven spot, play those 9 games, see what he's like, and then had him sent back down so it doesn't count as a year. But with the Oliver Shillington, the Eric Bransham, Sam Maliski, I was like, you really can't see out of some injuries. Unless he performs really, really well with the Colorado Eagles, maybe we'll see that couple game stench. But right now, he's just someone you should look out for if you're going to watch Eagle games in the AHL.
The defense, like we said, is going to be hard to crack, so
Yeah.
that'd be definitely a surprise. He'd have to beat out a few veterans to make the roster, and Malinsky too. So that'd be an interesting one. All right, outside of making the team, what prospects do you think everyone should be keeping an eye out? It could be in the AHL, it could be beyond that.
Christian Humphries, he just got drafted last year. I do believe in the fifth round. He was a prospect that many had him going much, much higher in the round 4, round
Mhm.
5, somewhere in round 6, but you got him in the round 7th. And he's someone that I really like. About 5'11". He should be playing in I forgot which university he's playing. That's kind of embarrassing. But he's a really interesting product because the Colorado Avalanche didn't have a lot of draft picks this year. They moved out of their first. They didn't like what they selected. They really liked the options. And so they moved back and they got a lot of really good depth picks. And Christian Humphries is a guy you should put a name out yourself that I wouldn't suspect to sign his ELC in the next coming years, but should definitely be seeing his play.
We'll be playing for the University of Michigan this
Thank you.
coming 2024-25. So that's this
Hmm.
season. So yeah, that's a big university to join. So yeah, he'll be down the road playing the NCAA
Yeah.
probably 3-4 seasons from now. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that I thought he was going to be drafted a lot sooner too. A seventh round pick. That's probably because of his size, and it's always
Yeah.
that. But yeah, definitely a good guy to watch. All right, this could be. I mean, there's a few guys who, of course, McKinnon's the obvious one, but who's going to lead the team in scoring, forward and defense? Okay, so I guess there's two obvious ones there.
Yeah. Forwards, it's going to be Nathan McKinnon again. I thought after we saw his 2022-2023 season where he put up, I believe, 111 points, I thought, or 114, I thought I don't want to limit him, but be like, I thought that would be the best we've seen. And we were blown away last year. Ed Lindsay winner, Hart Trophy winner. He's going to lead the forward out of the way, top C. He's got Mikko Rantanen potentially with Valerie Nichushkin and Gabriel Landeskog back. He's shown what he can do with those two guys. Defensive core, it's going to be Kale McCarr. You can make the argument for, he should have won the Norris or wherever, but statistically, he had a bad slump coming out of the All-Star break that really kind of put him behind when Quinn Hughes really picked up his play. So I suspect him to be, despite any injuries, again, the clear-cut shot to be a Norris competitor and put up another leading defensive core points.
Mhm. Yeah, I do think McKinnon gets 140 points again, or
Yeah.
was that one
Another
season
100
thing?
Another 140. I don't know. If he puts up another 140, that means he puts up another career-breaking home point streak, which, again, everything in a sense is luck when it comes to the way the puck bounces, the puck gets passed. But I can definitely say over 100 is easily written in the books.
He was just a beast last season. I mean,
Hmm.
it's such a fun guy to watch. I mean, at times I think he's funner to watch than McDavid. Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tough to kind of compare the two, and I think we did compare the two,
Yeah,
talking about their
we
speed, but
Jim Parsons did a great article, I believe in like February, March, when the debate really started heating up. And I compared McKinnon to McDavid when it comes to lightning and thunder.
mhm,
When you hear McDavid, you see the lightning bolt. You see him go from one end to another in an instant. You see how fast his skate move and how fast his stick moves. Where McKinnon, he kind of rounds up. You kind of hear him, and then by the time, like thunder, you see the flash, and then you hear the
yeah,
bang. And so by the time you hear that bang, McKinnon is either A, blown past your defense, or he set up a play where two guys are looking at him and Mikko Rantanen's left alone.
yeah.
So both are really fun, but they got little different nitbits of style when it comes to their game.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun duo to
Yeah.
watch at the Four Nations. That is for
Oh yeah.
sure. Holy, I'm really excited to watch that.
So am I.
All right, now one bold prediction, hot take for this season to finish off the show here.
Bold prediction. I believe we're going to see a Georgiev bounce back that's going to lead him to gain the Norse voting contendency. Last year was statistically his worst regular season. In part of how he just played, he didn't look confident, didn't look strong. But I think I like the additions to the defense and how more they'll be able to work in front of him and be able to cycle the puck. And the offense, I think there's going to be major questions when it comes to the bottom six. That's going to need some
Mm.
tweaking to start the season. But I really like how guys like Parker Kelly, Chris Wagner are going to be able to really help with that physicality and grit while being able to move and cycle the puck up to make sure it's in the offensive zone more. So Georgiev doesn't have to rely on constantly working on scanning the puck.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing going into this season. Make his job easier, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Stefano, for coming on and talking the Avalanche for this season. It should be another fun one coming up. There should be a really good team again.
Oh
Very
yeah.
fun to watch, especially with the forwards they've got, and of course, Kale McCarr.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's going to be good. So make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We've got the Substack going as well. It's all the best Avalanche articles, to take a look at that, and everything throughout the season that Stefano and the Avalanche writing team will be putting out. So lots of fun coming up. And
Hmm.
until our next preview show, we'll see you next time.